Hello, hello, and welcome back to Bearing Birth, a birth story podcast highlighting the emotional impact of birth, the immediate postpartum period, and the years beyond. I'm Jordan, a doula specializing in postpartum support.
And I'm Sophie, a perinatal mental health therapist. We have an amazing expert in all things babies on today. In this episode, we chat with Dr. Emily Knell Spaeth, founder of Be Well Baby PDX.
I love Emily. Emily is a Portland-based doctor of physical therapy and an international board-certified lactation consultant specializing in pelvic health and babies. She's also a yoga teacher, small business owner, and a mother of 3 under 5. This episode is so good. I'm so excited to be sharing it today.
Me too. Emily really does it all. We learned that her professional work and journey through motherhood have really come to inform one another over the years, and she really seems to have found her calling supporting people in this life phase.
In this episode, Emily walks us through each of her 3 birth stories and shares how her mindset shifted with each subsequent birth, how she took care of herself, and how her family rebuilt itself with each new family member.
Yeah, it was really special to get to hear how different each of her birth experiences were and how she has come to think about them. And it's so interesting how even when someone knows so much about all things birth, such as someone like Emily, birth is always a wild card, and it still seems really impossible to know what to expect in birth or to be able to control it fully.
And that theme comes up over and over again on this podcast. Being flexible in birth is so important. I really loved Emily's stories, and I really think she brought such a unique and thoughtful perspective to each one.
Now for some content warnings. In this episode, we discuss feeling unsafe in a hospital setting, working in a NICU environment, feeling judgment from a birth team, COVID, brief mention of death and death in childbirth, and brief mention of blood loss or hemorrhaging post-birth.
I will say, though, that this episode felt overwhelmingly positive around all things birth, and I'm so excited to share it with the world. Emily mentions a lot of really great resources in this episode, and you can find the links to those in the description along with Emily's information. Chances are, if you are pregnant or in postpartum, Emily has an offering that would be helpful for you or someone you know.
Also, just a reminder that this episode includes some cute baby noises, so thanks again for your patience on that. Please enjoy this episode with Emily. A doula and a therapist are sitting down to talk about birth. A doula and a therapist are sitting down to talk about birth.
Thanks so much for coming on, Emily. We're really excited to have you. We know that you do a lot in the birth world in Portland. So if you want, you can start with a little bit about what you do and maybe like how being a parent has influenced your work or vice versa.
So I'm the owner, founder of Be Well Baby PDX. And my goal is really to provide holistic peripartum, perinatal care to my clients, to the community. What that looks like is I have a support group that meets every week that Jordan, you help to support. And I have yoga classes for preconception, prenatal, and postpartum every week. And I teach a lot of workshops around town. So infant massage, things like that. I am a doctor of physical therapy and a lactation consultant. So I use those tools to support clients one-on-one as well. So I see a lot of people for pelvic health physical therapy, but I have years of experience in the neonatal ICU. So babies are my jam. And I love babies. And I love teaching parents how to best support their babies. And a lot of feeding issues have to do with the baby's body and the posture. So it all just fits together really beautifully.
I think that's amazing.
Can you walk us through like a typical day in the life of Emily? Because you do so much, and how do you do it all?
Is there a typical day?
It's so funny that you ask that. I have recently been thinking about, I've been recently trying to sit down and block my time so that like this is my dedicated time to course development. This is my dedicated time to recording. This is my dedicated time to one-on-one consults. This is my dedicated time to yoga. And it's just not working out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It seems impossible.
Yeah. So for example, on Monday morning, this coming Monday, I have an 8 a.m. one-on-one consult for a baby, for lactation and kind of the baby's body. And then I teach my yoga class. And then in the afternoon, I have a pelvic health evaluation, and then I'm done.
Cool.
there's other days like this morning, I taught a massage class. And if I wasn't here talking to you today, I would be hanging out with my older kiddos.
Yeah.
How old are your older kids?
3 and 5.
Wow. I'm so impressed by you. Truly.
They're really amazing. And they are so challenging. And I feel so lucky to be their mom.
Well, you look like, you're like glowing. Like it's hard to believe you're 3 months postpartum. It seems like this, it just means that this is really like your purpose in a way, I think.
I really feel like it is. When I started working again postpartum, I was probably, for this pregnancy, I was probably 8 weeks. Yeah. And you came with me to everything.
Oh.
And it just felt like I was in the right place. It didn't even feel like work because I just love it so much.
Yeah.
I feel similarly. I feel like I just blink and I get through like a super busy week just because it doesn't really feel like a job because it's so exciting. And I feel like when I watch the things that you do, I get excited because I feel like it's similar vibes. And same with you, Sophie.
Yeah.
It's just, I don't know. And it's a really nice group in Portland, like the energy of the birth world just feels so good, and it's fun to be a part of, even though I feel like I'm just like barely dipping my toe into it so far.
Yeah, I mean, everything feels so supportive here. I think there are places where it doesn't feel supportive, like it feels competitive. But I really believe that there is a right mental health professional for everyone. There's a right doula for everyone.
I agree.
And there's a right me for everyone, so.
And there's so much need out there.
Yeah. And I might be the right person who wants to follow me through pregnancy and postpartum and supporting their baby. But I might just be the right person for lactation and that's it. Or they might find me for body work because their IBCLC needs a little extra support with the physical therapy aspect of things.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so you have 3 kids.
I do.
And your most recent was born
November 28th.
Oh, November baby.
So yeah, how would you say that being a parent has impacted your work or vice versa? Like, I don't know which came first. I don't know if it was just like sort of like a dance back and forth. Like, how would you say?
I
like,
would
You must
say-
inform each other a lot.
right.
I would say it's definitely been a dance. I was already teaching yoga. I had already been teaching for probably 10 years before my daughter was born. And I went back to teaching postpartum yoga at like 6 weeks, as soon as I was ready to do any kind of movement. And I just, listened to my body but doing that with her, and she came with me to every class that I taught, and doing that was really, really powerful. And it set this example for people that they can bring their baby to stuff. And I really believe in our society that babies aren't out in the world as much as they need to be. And as a result of that, you get a lot of first-time parents who've never held a baby. And it's their baby that they're holding for the first time. And I think that does a disservice to people.
I totally agree.
And to babies. Babies have a very specific way of being handled that can be really respectful to them. And if you spend a lot of time around them, you can learn that just sort of by osmosis. And it doesn't really happen if you're not exposed to babies. So,
yeah, totally.
I really noticed that with my daughter, but I had already been like ready to dive into the pelvic health and neonatal therapy world as a physical therapist before she was born. I just hadn't had the experience of having my own neonate. And after that, my confidence just skyrocketed. And I was like, I could take care of anybody's baby.
Yeah.
So, and then of course I worked here in the NICU in town for 4 years and had one of my babies while I worked there. And it was really powerful to have to set boundaries every single day, working with 8 tiny babies and growing my own tiny baby. And then, meeting a baby with the same due date as me when they were born at 23 weeks. And just over and over again, having to set a boundary.
What does that look like when you say setting a boundary?
Well, for me, it wasn't the healthiest because it was almost like I dissociated from my pregnancy. Like I just didn't think about being pregnant during that time, which was 10 hours a day. Mm-hmm. And as a result of that, I didn't feel as connected during my second pregnancy. And by the time I went on maternity leave, I was like, whoa, I'm really pregnant. Look at that.
Do you think that you put that aside just because of fear?
Yeah, to protect myself and to protect the baby as well, because there's so much research about stress in pregnancy, and being in that trauma with families every single day is really powerful, and you can make an enormous impact. And my goal was always to be there for families. You know, my foundation is in yoga and massage, and then I became a physical therapist. So a lot of what I bring to physical therapy is a lot of the grounding practices that you learn as a yoga teacher and a massage therapist, that you need to leave your stuff somewhere else and be there present for the people that you're supporting. Mm-hmm. And so it ended up with me not addressing any fears that I had, and they would just come up as thoughts that wouldn't let me sleep, or, you know, things like that, that I really felt needed attention. And when I became pregnant with this baby, in the matter of a week, I think, I took an incredible workshop with Megan Peterson. Oh. And that's a wonderful yoga teacher with Tender Revolution. And I took that workshop with them, and it was so powerful for me to have this moment just to myself. And then I also saw my chiropractor and also talked to one of my friends who I consider kind of a colleague. We do work parties together from Courage to Answer. That's Dawn Albert. And then I had all these conversations in the course of a week, and I went out to dinner with my partner, and I, in the middle of dinner, was weeping. And he was like, you need to pull it together. I think you're probably pregnant. And I was like, oh, of course I am. And I think I can't work in the NICU anymore. Mm-hmm. It just sort of all happened at once. Mm-hmm. And so I didn't work in the NICU throughout most of the pregnancy with my third baby. And it was very different. And I felt so much more connected. Mm-hmm. Wow. So it's really amazing how just you learn and you grow with each subsequent journey through pregnancy and birth.
Know what doesn't work, what does work. With the reducing stress, what did you notice sort of concretely with the third pregnancy that didn't happen with the second one?
First of all, I had more time. Mm-hmm. So I was dedicating, instead of working on my business part-time and working in the NICU part-time and trying to also raise my kids and be a present mom, I was only working on my business, trying to be a present mom, and taking care of my body. So I went and did pelvic floor health work. I did chiropractic. I got massages. It's really hard as a healthcare practitioner and giver of help to receive. So I made that a really big priority.
We talk about that a lot.
It is hard. And I think the best part about doing that was all of those sort of pauses and reminders. You are pregnant. You get to take a deep breath, take care of yourself. And a lot of people who supported me along the way, in terms of helping my body be more comfortable, but also helping my mind be more clear.
Yeah, I feel like I wish everyone, not just pregnant people, could have enough space in their life to take care of themselves in that way. That's one reason I like the birth world, is because there's so many people coming in trying to offer support in all their different unique ways. Mm-hmm. And I want everyone to have all of those things. Mm-hmm. And most people can't have all of those things. Most people can't have half of those things. And it's just so profound to hear like a direct story from you of like, okay, what changed in your life? I gave myself all this support and I like got all these benefits from it. And it's,
There
I
was
just wish,
space.
I wish
There was
everyone could
space.
have that.
Yeah.
I'm still trying to wrap my brain around because I have one child who's 15 months and I do my work and I do my podcast and my personal life. And like you're juggling so much. Were you always somebody who could multitask and have multiple projects going? Does that help you thrive? Or how, like, what is it that allows you to do this important work for others and for your family and for yourself?
That's a great question. It's really interesting because I sometimes feel like it's not a good thing. Like I do too many things. I'm too busy. There's like too much Emily. But I've recently started realizing that it's my superpower. Like I'm good at that.
Yeah, if you're thriving in it, then that's all that matters.
Yeah.
you
And
know?
if I'm happy.
If you're happy,
Like
yeah.
I'm happy to be giving all of these different offerings, and I have so much knowledge and I just want other people to have it too.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the answer to your question is yes. I've always been somebody who does too many things.
Or just the right amount for you to feel good. Yeah.
Do you find that it fills your cup so that you can keep going and you're not like sort of hitting walls?
Yeah. And for me, the like almost embarrassing number of letters behind my name is all just because I'm a curious human and I love learning and I want to know all the things so that I can help my people. So I think, in PT school, I was the president of my class and I started offering free yoga classes and meditation classes to staff, faculty, and students in the whole school every week. And I was also trying to get a doctorate. And it always just sort of makes me, if I'm not doing a little bit of giving and doing that movement piece and offering those things, I don't feel like I don't feel like myself.
Yeah, it's really fulfilling to you and probably provides a lot of self-worth and identity. And
Plus you learn more that way. So much more hands-on learning.
And you connect with so many people too. Like I imagine teaching those yoga classes, you got to be with faculty and other students and you build community through that too.
And my confidence also grew. So the other day I had the privilege of attending this networking event called Power, Portland, Oregon Women Entrepreneurs Roundtable.
Oh.
It's a really amazing group. And the speakers canceled, both of them, last minute. And I had the opportunity to fill both slots. And when they asked me, I thought, okay, what am I good at? And I taught a yoga class to a bunch of entrepreneurs. And it was so powerful and so amazing. And I only have the confidence to be able to design a class like that on the spot that's relevant and interesting to people because I've had to do that so many times and I've put myself in the position of having to do that so many times.
Is that a challenge for you or is that something that's easy to say, yes, I'm going to do that?
The first time I ever taught a yoga class, I started the yoga club at Willamette University in 2009. And on the very first day, people showed up and rolled out their yoga mats and sat quietly waiting for a yoga class to start. And that wasn't my plan. My plan was for us to maybe talk about yoga and maybe go to a yoga class together. But it was so clear that that's what they were there for that I just taught a yoga class. And that moment made me feel like, whoa, this is so powerful. And it sort of just came through me. And it was easy.
Yeah.
And so now when I'm teaching, I don't prepare for my classes. I ask what people need in their bodies, and then I design a class around that.
I love that.
Yeah.
Well, we've talked a little bit about how being a parent has impacted your work, but we really would love to hear your birth stories. So do you want to touch on the 3 birth stories that you have and like what's impactful to you? We usually say about birth stories, like whatever feels important to you is what's important to us. And we would love to hear what stands out to you from your birth stories.
Great. I would love to share. My first birth story, it sort of starts with my pregnancy. My pregnancy was not planned. And at the same time, I knew as immediately that I wanted to give birth at home. And we didn't have a home. We were, renting a duplex or whatever. And I still wanted to give birth there. And I actually planned to move to Portland and have all of our babies here and start our family here, but our lives got in the way and we weren't able to move here. So I did establish care with Angela Truby from Globe Midwifery, and I was so excited to work with her, and then I couldn't move here. So there was a little loss there.
Where were you trying to move from?
Oakland, California.
Okay, so that's pretty far.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And California has different laws as well. So we did find a home birth midwife in the Bay Area, and she was amazing, Morgan, and with Hummingbird Midwifery. And I just feel so grateful for her presence in my life. But I did not expect that I would have a baby before 40 weeks. I knew a lot about birth. I was already a prenatal postpartum yoga teacher. I had graduated from PT school. I was really, confident. I was like, I know bodies, and I really know my body. I've been working with bodies and my body for so long. I got this. I can do this. And it was harder than I anticipated, of course, like it is. Birth is humbling. So I ended up waking up in the morning and my water broke at 37 weeks and 3 days. And it turns out that I actually had an infection that was undiagnosed. So I had like burning, itching, discomfort, and I had tests for yeast and tests for bacterial vaginosis and just all of the tests. Nothing came back positive. And our bodies are just so much more susceptible to an imbalance in flora during that time. So I knew that, and yet none of the remedies for either bacterial vaginosis or yeast were working at all. And I was just uncomfortable and itchy and red. But my symptoms were not in either of those categories in a way that healthcare providers could identify. So I just went through the last 2 months of my pregnancy very, very, very uncomfortable.
Oh, that's so frustrating.
Yeah. And when my water broke, I didn't know at the time that having BV, bacterial vaginosis, could impact your sac and could weaken your sac. But in retrospect, I'm like, obviously, that's why my water broke so early. And I was really disappointed because I wanted to, go to 40 weeks and go to term. And my midwife was very laid back. She told me to just kind of do what I was doing. And I ended up going to a yoga class that day and just kind of taking care of myself. And slowly I felt contractions, but it was nothing was strong. My body was not ready to be in labor, and she was not ready to be born.
This was after your water broke?
Mm-hmm. It was a very slow trickle. And I just kind of kept going about my day that day. But in California, you have 72 hours to birth a baby. And then you are required to transfer for antibiotics. And a midwife can lose her license if you don't do that. So we were really aware of that timeline. And I felt very pressured in that timeline, which is unfortunate because as I've learned so much, I could have just kind of hung out in bed. Maybe it was just my bag that was leaking slightly and everything was fine.
Can I ask a quick question? Did you have an intention to move to Portland specifically because of the laws around childbirth here? Or, okay, there were other reasons?
Yeah.
Okay.
We just want to live here.
Yeah.
We just wanted to live here.
You made it.
Live our
You're
lives
here now.
here. Yeah, and we made it. So after kind of taking it easy and things not progressing, we started a protocol of breast pumping and herbs that is a pretty standard midwifery protocol. And it was awful. The pumping before you've ever breastfed is horrible. It's just like torture.
Yeah.
And there are so many other things that you can do instead of that. You can do nipple stimulation. You can do, so I just didn't know as much. It's first birth. And I did castor oil. I just tried all of the things to get things going. And I was not progressed enough by Wednesday morning. And we had to go into the hospital. When we arrived at the hospital, this part is like the part that stands out the most to me, because it was so clear that my body was like, we are not having a baby here. We are going to shut things down. We are not going to have a baby here because this is not safe. And it was wild how quickly that happened. So I went in, they had some confusion and sent my midwife away. And then another midwife came in and asked my partner all these questions. And he had no idea what the answers were. And he was like, please, can you just ask our midwife? She was like, oh, you have a midwife? So it was a very confusing triage. They brought our midwife back in, but not before they did a cervical exam that I didn't fully consent to during a contraction. And it was
oh my gosh,
so painful. And I had already, by this point, been at around 6 centimeters for a day. Like I had just not been progressing, and my cervix was swollen and just could not dilate anymore. So after that painful cervical exam, they quickly got us into a room. They settled everything, and I looked at my partner and I was like, I feel fine. I feel good. Let's go home. He was like, oh no. So my body just decided not to do it. And after a bunch of Pitocin and hours of roaring and screaming and suffering, like I was really suffering
so
in
you
there.
did go home?
No.
Oh, okay.
Pitocin.
I
Yeah,
had
because they
Pitocin,
don't let you go home if you're on Pitocin.
No. So they ended up letting me labor for a little bit, but I was in such a good place. I was like, oh, contractions are like 11 minutes apart. And everything just slowed way down. And after they started the Pitocin, they turned it up really high, just because my water had been broken since Sunday morning and they were getting concerned. Although I really appreciated that they didn't make me take antibiotics. They said that you don't have a fever. There's no reason that you need antibiotics unless you have a fever. And in retrospect, I kind of wish they had given me antibiotics because I had BV. But that's okay. So eventually I looked at my midwife and I asked, I understand inflammation. If my cervix is swollen, I need to decrease inflammation. So what tools do I have to do that? And she said, sleep.
Sure.
I know that, but I can't sleep right now. So they ended up offering an epidural, and I refused any other cervical checks except from my midwife.
And she was allowed to then stay with you? That's good.
Yes. And that's and this was before COVID. So there was there were probably 7 people of my choosing in the room when she was finally born. It was like anybody could be there. But there was just some confusion at the very beginning. So when I realized that I needed to sleep and an epidural would allow me to sleep, and it would also allow me to be conscious if I did need a C-section, I decided to get an epidural. And I really felt like that was a powerful decision and a powerful moment that I got to make, which was so cool because in so much of birth, you kind of feel like this vulnerability and like that power is taken from you. Especially if you're a transfer, because there's just so much judgment.
Right.
And of course, working in the NICU, there was a lot of judgment that I was doing home births. But after I got the epidural with Sadie, I slept. My partner slept. And I got the epidural Wednesday night at around 7 in the evening, and we slept. And then by Thursday morning at 3 a.m., I was fully dilated, ready to go.
Wow.
And I pushed, and I had my doula and my partner, maybe my sister. I had my sister and my partner holding one of each of my legs, and my doula and my midwife and the hospital midwife and a bunch of nurses were all there. I think my mom was there. I don't know. It was a party. And my brother-in-law had given me miso soup, and I had really bad heartburn. So I was like laughing and also like, ow, between contractions as I was pushing. So everyone was laughing. And birthing her and pushing her out is one of those moments that I don't have in my memory. You know how there's sort of sometimes these like blocks.
Well, in high stress situations, because you have a lot of cortisol, your working memory decreases.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And with an epidural, also, you don't get the influx of hormones that you normally would with a birth where you're really just getting that oxytocin boost. And my adrenaline was so high that after I birthed her, I needed stitches. I had a 2nd-degree tear. She was on my chest, and I was like, I'm ready to go home. So when do I get to do that? And they were like, well, let's get you into the postpartum unit first, you know. And I was there sort of awake and watching her. And my partner was sleeping, but I got on the phone and I said, hello, I'm going to need to speak to the charge nurse, please. And the nurse was very kind and was like, all right, hold on 1 minute. We'll get her for you. And the charge nurse came on and I said, hi, can you just run me through the things I need to get home? And she was like, a hearing screen, pediatrician. And I was like, I'm going to need all those things because my midwife's coming to the house tonight to do a weight check and to make sure that everything is good.
Good for you for doing that, because there really is this extensive checklist that you have to go through, and you feel kind of held hostage.
Oh, yeah.
And not in control of it at all.
Yeah. Yeah. And I really just was like, let's just check done all of these things. And my midwife, as a home birth midwife, she can do the newborn screen. She can do all the tests that we need done. So I was able to get out of there by 11 and home and resting.
So they gave up some of the checks because you had a midwife who was going to fill in. Oh, that's great.
And the lactation support. They were a little bit concerned that she couldn't latch, but they allowed for us to go home and
get support elsewhere.
Yeah. And I did have a lactation consultant come to the house because my milk did not come in. My body wasn't ready.
You're in a lot of stress.
Yeah. And the epidural
early.
and the IV fluids have a really big impact on your milk coming in as well. So I ended up finger feeding colostrum. My partner finger fed colostrum. She was unhappy for the first few days, and we got through it.
It can be scary first few days.
Oh, that first baby, first postpartum experience is so hard. It's so hard.
With everything that you knew about, from working in this field, sometimes you know too much and then you're just even more surprised because it hits you in different ways, or you think the things that will be hard for you end up being maybe the easiest things, and there's other things that you never even expected being the hardest part. What were some of the hardest parts of your first postpartum experience?
I think I knew breastfeeding was going to be hard, but I did not anticipate that it would take so long for my milk to come in, and that I would have a baby who was awake every hour to try to bring my milk in for me. And I think the mindset shift that I've gotten with more time and more babies is that instead of feeling like you don't have enough milk, you can't feed your baby's unhappy, all of those self-deprecating things that new parents tend to do to themselves. I view it, and I try to help my clients view it as like, this is your baby's job. Your baby's job right now is to be kind of fussy and to eat all the time to help your milk come in. And it's okay. And it's okay for you to keep feeding them. And that tenderness that you feel on your nipples it is what it is. It's not okay. It's, you know,
Part of it.
it's just part of the process, and it's not forever. And that feeling of like every time a baby latches, while you're also postpartum and trying to heal in any way, you know, from a vaginal delivery or from an abdominal delivery, it doesn't matter. Those healing at the same time that you're experiencing a different kind of pain is excruciating.
Yeah. And you really think is this what it's going to be like forever? Right. And you're like, how do I even sustain this for?
There's such a problem with like realistic expectations after birth for so many things, but that's one of them. And that's one of the reasons why we want to have the podcast, is to talk about all the things that people don't talk about, because it's like all those things that you're experiencing, like people don't know. Yeah. They don't know that, like, even when it's hard, it's what happens. Yeah. Or like, this won't last forever, for example, and you're not failing. And
And your baby not sleeping isn't the end of the world. And you not getting sleep is going to be okay. The hormones of postpartum are actually designed to make the birthing person okay with less sleep. Doesn't last forever. And sleep deprivation can make you crazy. But the fact that you have a baby that's going to let you know when they have a need is really wonderful. The fact that you are sleep deprived is not forever. And that is something that is really, really hard to remember in the moments of sleep deprivation. It's also hard to get along with your partner if you have one postpartum. That is a really, really big challenge, because you have all of these fluctuating hormones, and your body just did this magical thing and their body didn't. And you've been transformed, and they have watched you be transformed. And sometimes it's she's like, what? And sometimes it's just a challenge to come back to the same plane after birth. So all of that is really, really hard. And I think new parents don't realize that it's important that they don't get a full night's sleep postpartum, that it's their baby's job to communicate a need.
That's what's supposed to happen. Yeah.
That's something that I have a really hard time with, the snoo, because it will
quiet their need.
It'll quiet
their
the need.
Expression of needs.
And what they'll learn is, as soon as I have a need, it gets quieted. Not as soon as I have a need,
someone's going to come
and address the need.
Yeah, a human
directly
comes to address your need. Totally.
And in the early days, that can really lead to problems with breastfeeding. And
yeah. So that was my first, and it was so powerful, and I felt so excited to do it again. The postpartum period was so magical.
Once you made it through the first couple weeks.
Yeah, once you get through the first couple weeks. So the postpartum time with my partner, it was like falling in love with him all over again.
Oh, wow.
As we were falling in love with this new little creature. And I felt like every challenge and every need was addressed. You know, I really, really stick to that midwifery model of care of not getting out of bed for a few days and not going downstairs for the first 2 weeks. And
just connecting and getting as much rest as you can. And
incubating.
Yeah.
And he brought me every meal, breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Partner.
Oh, yeah. It was amazing.
Did you feel like working through like each different challenge in postpartum brought you closer?
Yeah. Absolutely. I think every argument, every disagreement, every challenge, you just get a little bit closer once you get to the other side.
As somebody who likes to do a lot of things and is fulfilled by many projects, was it hard to slow down in this season of life and only do
what's necessary?
Yeah.
I feel like postpartum has actually been this beautiful permission for me to not do It's funny, people who follow me on Instagram know that most of my postpartum was taken up with telling my birth story on Instagram.
Yeah. I was very impressed with we post on Instagram, but we're only able to do it because there's 3 of us doing it. And then you were doing it like really soon after postpartum. And I was like, whoa, it was amazing.
But it was part of my birth story processing, I think, with that birth. And
I believe that.
With my first 2, I typed out the birth story. It was really powerful to have permission to not do when I was postpartum, and to have not only permission from my healthcare provider, my midwife, but to have my partner be really, really behind that. And as a pelvic health professional, I am like, protect your pelvic floor. When my midwife told me that the reason that you're doing nothing right now is to protect your pelvic floor when you're 70, I was like, oh, of course. Of course. This is time that I need to allow my body to heal. There is no bouncing back. Your body heals kind of if you do nothing.
Yeah.
And that is just a powerful experience to have had myself. But I did find myself, you're kind of creative postpartum. And I found myself having so many ideas and so much joy and exploration in my ideas. So I always encourage people during that time to just write down their thoughts, write down lists, write down ideas, but don't feel the need to act on them right away.
It's kind of what we talked about earlier, where like when you give yourself more space, like there's more room. I feel like there's more room for creativity when we're not going all the time. It's like people don't give themselves enough space for that. So I can see that being a benefit of the postpartum period. And it's kind of like fighting against like the rhetoric of like, you have to be going all the time. It's like, oh, now I have this permission and I need to do this for my body. So yeah, I love that.
Do you want to transition into your second birth story?
I'd love to. So my second pregnancy was relatively uneventful, except that I had this left hip pain, and I was so into spinning babies. I was like, I'm going to walk 3 miles a day. I am going to do my spinning babies like cycle of movements. I was teaching yoga online because it was COVID. So I was teaching prenatal and postpartum yoga.
Wait, hold up. How was having a baby during COVID times?
Like the first
the
baby?
lockdown. Yeah, you had, because your daughter must have been a year old?
Yeah, she was like 14 months old. My dad died the week that California shut down.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So it was a wild time. Yeah. And I was away. So I was down there because he had just died. 3 days later, California shut down.
Wow.
And I was like, am I going to be able to get back to my baby?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's
terrifying.
so scary.
And I was one of the only people on the airplane coming back.
Whoa.
Basically, it was chaos, but I worked at the hospital. So my job didn't change at all. And my husband just came to work from home. He's an accountant. At first, our daycare did shut down. And what we decided to do was I woke up with the baby and hung out with her for the morning, put her down for her nap, and went to work. And my husband got off work, and I worked kind of a swing shift, like 1 p.m. to 11 p.m. And then I would come home and my husband would do the after nap time up to bedtime. And after she went to bed, he would go back to work. So we just kind of made it work like that for a few weeks. And then the daycare opened up for healthcare providers and we went back to relatively normal life. And she got exposure to other kids and yeah, it was pretty amazing.
That's great.
And then you decided that you wanted to have another child. Was that something, an intentional conversation, or was it another surprise?
It was very intentional. And of course, as a person who worked with babies in the NICU, I could see firsthand that like nothing slowed down. Like babies were still being born. And we had talked about what age difference we wanted, and we knew that we wanted 3. And I knew that I wanted to have babies by a certain age.
Yeah.
And timing everything out, it just made sense to start trying when we did.
How old are you?
I am now 35. I've had all my babies
Wow.
right before my 35th birthday. She was born like
Congrats.
4 or 5 days before my 35th birthday.
Yeah.
As somebody who, my sister had her first baby at 44.
Wow.
Yeah. Amazing.
That is amazing.
And so powerful, incredible. And as someone who...
I mean, congrats because you wanted that for yourself, not because it's like, you can have babies anytime.
Yeah, I know. But there is a lot of discrimination, I think,
yeah.
on people who are having babies a little bit later, which is a lot of us.
Yeah.
I
mean, I feel the pressure.
Yeah.
I'm 34 now.
Yeah.
We haven't decided.
Totally. And it is really hard also coming from that healthcare perspective, like you said earlier, knowing too much.
Yeah.
I just know. I know what the risks are. I've seen them in the NICU,
Yeah.
But the same holds true for home birth. I know what the risks are, and I've seen them in the NICU. Mm-hmm. Water birth, I've seen them in the NICU. Hospital birth, I've seen them in the NICU.
Yeah.
So it kind of didn't matter,
Mm-hmm. Quick question.
after a certain point.
So you took a break from the NICU while pregnant and then you went back?
Not with my second.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm. I was very...
You took a break?
After I found out I was pregnant with Rosemary.
Okay.
Yeah. So my second baby, we did not know what the sex was going to be. And we were very excited about this surprise. It ended up being Hank. And
Hank, I love that.
Oh.
And he's just an amazing little baby. I was able to stop working at 36 weeks with Hank. And because I thought he would come early, because my water broke early with Sadie. But Hank decided that he was going to cook for a good long time. And I had prodromal labor. So I was just in labor constantly for weeks, it felt like, for a few hours, like 3 to 5 minutes apart, strong contractions, and then go to bed and nothing happened.
Wow.
And then at 40 weeks and 3 days, he decided to arrive. And I didn't have a doula. And it felt very isolated. It was right in the middle of COVID in 2021. And I was I was feeling really empowered to just do things by myself. And I knew that I wanted to kind of labor, and I knew it would take a while. My first birth had gone from Sunday to Thursday, so I thought I probably had some time. Mm-hmm. And when things started heating up, I didn't even wake up my partner. I felt like I was fine. I could go to the bathroom and hang out. I was really enjoying kind of the power that I felt of soothing my own body and feeling the surges and moving through things.
It's a very different experience from your first time where you're in a lot more control.
Yeah.
And this was a planned home birth?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. All of them have been planned, originally been planned home births.
Right.
And this one, I was able to work with the original midwife, Angela Truby. So that's it was just a really beautiful circle. Mm-hmm. Angela gives you a pink sheet of paper for if the baby's coming and there's no midwife. So when I finally had Schaefer call Angela, it was 2:30 in the morning.
Your partner?
Schaefer is my partner. And when I finally had Schaefer call Angela, he called her and said, I don't know. I mean, sometimes they're 30 seconds apart and sometimes they're like 6 minutes apart. I'm not really sure. And she listened to one contraction and she was like, why didn't you call me sooner?
Oh.
Schaefer grabbed the pink sheet of paper and had Emily lay on her left side. Try to just have her breathe and not push until I get there. I'll be there as soon as I can.
Is that like the pad? The pink pad?
No, she was saying that they got a sheet of paper, I'm guessing with instructions on if the baby's coming before she gets there.
What to do if you've got to catch the baby.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I'm guessing he had to tell you because he was getting the pink sheet of paper and like getting you in position. So how did that feel when you were? I guess you were feeling in control already. Did your feelings change when you realized that she might not make it or she was trying to hurry there?
I thought it was kind of funny because there was no possible way that would happen because my first birth, this was from 8 p.m. to 1 a.m. on one day.
Wow.
My first birth was like a 4-day experience. So I thought, oh, that's sweet that she thinks the baby's coming, but like it's not. And And of course I was already saying I felt like I had to poop, like I was already there, but I was like, she doesn't really know. But laying on my left side was uncomfortable because I had this left hip pain, a deep pain in my pelvic floor. I had been seeing so many providers for it. And what I realized in my third pregnancy is that if I just didn't do as much, it didn't hurt as much. But I was like, I need to keep walking so that I can keep my muscles strong and that will help. And it always didn't help my pelvic floor. So
I would have a hard time with that because it's just, you just want to have the control over doing things for yourself, like taking care of yourself. Of course, it means like moving your body. Why would it just mean resting?
And in our society throughout pregnancy, we don't move enough. And it's really obvious to me with all of the babies that I see who have a head turn preference, who were just kind of stuck in one position in their little uterus home. And I know that, and I want to practice what I preach. So I'm like, let's move. And then I just had excruciating pain. So laying on my side sucked. Hated it.
Do you know how long you were in that position?
Probably not very long because she got there at 3 a.m. And immediately they sort of like flew in. She had her student and she had the assistant midwife. For people listening who don't know a ton about home birth, normally there is a midwife.
She flew?
She flew in, just like on her broomstick.
Okay. Not like she flew in an airplane to get to you. I was like, wait, how did she do
While
that
you were
in 4
laying on your
hours?
left side.
Yeah. Just checking.
So for people listening who don't know a ton about home birth midwives, you have a midwife for the birthing person and a midwife for the baby. And generally, midwives have students. Midwives learn through apprenticeship. So they all came together and were ready for this baby to show up. And I was roaring and I was like feeling really powerful. And as soon as they came in, Angela asked if I wanted a cervical check, and she had heard in detail my previous birth experience. So she was very sensitive to what I wanted. And I, as a data-driven person and a sciencey person, was like, give me all the information. And she did a quick, painless, like, I don't know how midwives are so gentle. It's kind of amazing. And she said, you're complete. Get in whatever position you want and you can have your baby.
How it was just like so supported. It's so great.
It was incredible. And I was like, what do you mean? I need someone to tell me what to do. I don't know what to do. And so I tried being on all fours because it's always the most comfortable position for me when I'm pregnant. I think part of what happens in pregnancy is that you lose your glutes because of your center of gravity shifting forward, something we work on a lot in my yoga classes. Because of that, I get a lot of sacrum pain, and I don't like someone pushing too hard on my sacrum. I don't like a lot of things that actually feel good for people in birth. In pregnancy, for me, being on all fours is just always really comfortable. I know I can get some spirally movements, which are really, really helpful for your hips, moving even just a micromillimeter in all the directions that your hips can move in is really, really powerful. And being on all fours was just not bringing him down. And so I got my physio ball and I was sort of in an arm wrestling position with my partner, holding his hands. And I bared down in that position. So on my knees with my elbows on my ball and like pushing in that way. And it was so powerful and I felt so strong. It was really kind of incredible. I have a video of when his head came out, and so beautifully, Angela said with just this like beautiful angelic voice, nuchal cord. And I, of course, being a healthcare person, knew exactly what that meant. For those of you who don't know what it means that the cord was around the neck. And the next kind of moment, she said, "Are you pushing?" And as a person who's having a baby and actually trying to push, not the thing you want to hear, because you're like, yes, I think I am. And I did say, I think I am. And then she said, okay, Emily, for this next push, I need it to be the biggest push of your life. And I kind of knew in my mind that I needed to get him out.
There was a seriousness to the tone.
Almost, but really it felt like the words that she was saying were serious, but the way that she was saying it was very calm. She wasn't afraid of anything happening.
Yeah, she was like guiding the ship and knew what she was doing, but like it was urgent, but it wasn't like scary for her.
Yeah. And I didn't mention this before, but my sac never broke up to this point. So the sac was around his face.
Oh, wow.
And the cord was around his neck, around the sac, around his face.
Wow.
And so as I pushed for the next push, it was this like big roar and then a hold and then a push. And the water broke right as his shoulders came through. And I immediately like flipped my leg over the cord and got in the bed, and she put him on my chest, and it was so fast. And in the video, you can see how quickly she gets the cord from around his neck. She unveils his head because the sac is keeping him from being able to cry and breathe, which he's trying to do. And then he gets onto my chest and he's like screaming and raring to go. So it was really, really powerful and so different from the first experience. Also, he was 8 pounds and Sadie was a 5-pound baby who lost almost more than 10% of her body weight. So she was a tiny little baby. And Hank was a big, chunkin' baby. Each of my babies have gotten subsequently larger.
Definitely more time in there than
there's
the first
more
one.
space. They stretch it out.
Make room.
Yeah. And then he latched and was able to eat. And he did have a tongue tie, and that was challenging. But I was able to kind of overcome that and move forward, and all of the pain that I experienced was okay. And it's funny, after the third, the first two seem like, oh, they were fine, and then the third is really what sticks in your mind. But if I bring myself back to that time, I was really, I had trouble connecting because I had been trying to disconnect from being pregnant for so long. And the postpartum time was just really special for me to actually meet him. I knew that I was having a little boy baby, and my daughter knew that she was having a brother. And it just was kind of in the back of my heart and my mind. But having that sort of disconnect through the pregnancy was hard, and probably harder in retrospect. And then meeting him and being able to have that postpartum time with him in our home that we love in Portland, where we wanted to be, with our family and our amazing daughter, who was just so thrilled to be a big sister. So thrilled.
How old was she at the time?
2.5.
Yeah.
And she was just so good. There's like a very sweet video of her coming in and kissing him and holding him for the first time. And it's so amazing. And that incubation happened again with our little new family. I've talked to Barb Buckner Suarez a lot, who's just an amazing person for helping couples connect. And we work with her just to solidify our connection throughout having babies. And one of the things that she said in our last session was that you just have to break the family unit apart. You're not building on anything. You're breaking it down completely and rebuilding it every time you add a new baby. And that was so powerful because we had this little family of 3 and we had to just break it down. And our daughter just did an amazing job of filling this role of big sister and continues to.
You all changed.
Yeah. And now Hank is learning about what it means to be a big brother. So,
did you process your first birth at all between the first two? You did. Did you find that the second birth was like an additional way of healing, or did you sort of work through that already before you went through your second?
I think it was. I think partially because I had planned a home birth the first time and transferred, I just wanted to, I trusted so much that my body was capable of doing this safely. And I really wanted to sort of live up to that trust that I had in myself. And I was able to do that. And it happened so much faster. It was just like such a everyone says this about second births, but it really was incredible to me how efficient my body was at remembering how to do that. And, there was nothing that made my cervix swollen, and I had had enough rest, and yeah.
How did you trust yourself? What was that process like for people who might be listening who are trying to find that inner strength and trust? And that's also me asking, and planning for our second, if you've had a traumatic birth where you lose a sense of maybe trust or intuition in yourself, it's been sort of taken from you. What can you do?
Oh my gosh. It's so interesting because when I was pregnant with Rosemary, I feel like I did a lot more processing of my birth with Sadie because I had more space to do that. But there was one day where I decided, like, man, if only this one thing had been different, then my birth might have been a completely different experience, and I wouldn't have had to go through what I went through, and it wouldn't have taken so long. But then I realized that I wouldn't be who I am without that first experience. I wouldn't be able to understand what it feels like for a nurse in the hospital to be just so dismissive of your wishes. That's kind of how we grow as humans. And I had this crazy experience we can talk about a different time, where I ended up being evacuated from the Himalayas in India. And so I really embodied that everything happens because it has to happen in the way that it happens, and it happens at the right time. And it really, makes us who we are. And I really just sort of had grace for my past self a little bit more as I was going through my pregnancy with Rosemary, because it's hard looking back and wishing you had advocated for something different, or wishing you had just known this one little thing and that could have changed the outcome. I get this with families who have attempted a home birth and then ended up getting a C-section.
Like, if I had only done that, what if I did this?
Right.
Yeah.
And it's just it's not what happened, and that's okay. So I think that is a really important piece of birth, is that there is this transformation that happens, and we can do as much education as we want. We can, believe me, as somebody who teaches all the classes, I want everyone to know what they can know before going into an experience like that. But there's just something that you can't know. And every single birth is so, 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 so different.
And they all have this wisdom to offer you if you can listen and look.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. There's so much wisdom, and there's so much every time that you're sharing a piece of your birth story. We just did birth story processing in my support group yesterday, and it was so powerful. And there were some people who had realizations in just the fifth or sixth time that they had shared their birth story that they were able to kind of grow with and move forward with. And I think there's just a lot there, and it continues. It's the gift that keeps on giving. You know?
We had somebody on, actually, the episode that aired this month, Edith, who gave birth 16 years ago. She had come to something new during the session with us. Yeah, time can help make things click.
You're never done processing.
You're never done processing, yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want to share Rosemary's birth story?
I'd love to. And it's shared in great detail on Instagram if you want more information, but I'll give you the brief synopsis here. Essentially, I had a very similar start to my labor, except that the kids' school was on strike. And then we had the week of Thanksgiving where there was no school. And it was really chaotic having two other kids to take care of, while my brain and body just wanted to cocoon and have a baby. And so she hung on for even longer than Hank did. And it was the morning that we were bringing Sadie back to school after the strike. We were so excited. There was like a little parade of people welcoming teachers and students back in, I ran into another dad and I said, yeah, I think I could have a baby today. Now that everyone's back at school, I think I could have her today. And I was 40 weeks and 4 days. And I went to a bunch of acupuncture. I went to 2 different acupuncture sessions because I was like, I'm ready to have this baby. And by the end of the day, I was definitely in labor. The prodromal labor had been kind of on and off for a few days. And I finally was like, okay, this isn't going away. Mm-hmm. And I called Angela, same midwife, and she was like, okay, well, I'm just finishing up another birth basically. So I'm trying to sleep and just call me if you really think it's happening. I was like, yeah, of course. This is great. So she was asleep and our doula was Allison, amazing woman. And she had always said, like, I want to be there from the start. Like, you just tell me when you think this is happening and I will be there. So I was like, you don't have to come yet. We're good. Schaefer did all these amazing things to try to increase my oxytocin. So he gave me a massage and that really helped move things along. We had also decided like, okay, today's the day. So the kids went to an Airbnb next door where their grandparents were. Mm-hmm. And it was just quiet in the house. And I really I birth well in a dark environment. Yeah. And we all do. We're mammals. And so I was feeling very relaxed. And I called Allison and was like, I've been kind of working my way through these surges. Schaefer's been asleep for a few hours. Why don't you just come? She arrived and I was still kind of in host mode. So I was like, welcome to my home. You can have a nap in Sadie's bed if you'd like. I'm going to go back in here. And Allison was like, I've never actually come to a house and just took a nap before. So I worked my way through the surges a little bit more. And finally I was like, it could be fast. It could be slow. You don't know. Throughout my pregnancy with Rosemary, my amazing chiropractor, Dr. Katie, said, I think that this baby's going to be a really grounding force for you. And I don't even know if she remembers saying that, but it was incredibly impactful for me. And I really feel it now that she's here, in the birth, everything. But then I started second guessing myself because I felt like I knew too much. I had had this birth that took too long. I had had this birth where Angela almost didn't make it. And I didn't know when the right time to call was. So the part of me that felt like I might know what was going on just kind of went offline. And I went into a state of not knowing. And in retrospect, I really have a lot of appreciation for myself because what ended up happening was that my midwife was actually at another birth, which had never happened. And so she had to kind of switch gears, get her student to pack things up and come over to mine. And luckily...
Had never happened for the midwife?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And luckily, the person who was birthing had already transferred to the hospital and was cared for there. But it was a lot of days of sleep deprivation for my midwife to then have to come to my birth. Mm-hmm. And I had never had a water birth, and I had hoped to with Hank, but we just didn't have time. So there was a lot of should I be in the water? Should I be out of the water? Am I pushing? Am I not pushing? And I just kept second guessing myself. But like I said, in retrospect, I really appreciate that because I ended up having an anterior cervical lip, which is just part of the cervix doesn't fully dilate. So I was almost there, but part of my cervix was not fully dilated and my body was having a really hard time getting all the way dilated. Mm-hmm. And usually one of the reasons that can happen is the position of the baby. And so Allison was amazing. We tried all these different things. I also had Kyra there, who's a birth photographer, because I really wanted just all of the documentation. Mm-hmm. I know this is going to be my last birth. And I'm I want everyone. I also wanted a lot of female energy. So there was a lot of people, which also kind of probably stalled me a little bit in retrospect. Overarching theme of feeling unsure. I didn't want to push against a cervix that wasn't fully dilated because of my first birth experience of having a swollen cervix that wouldn't dilate. Mm-hmm. So I was I had a lot of fear about repeating that and having to transfer. And at this point, I was starting to feel discouraged. And with Hank, my midwife arrived and then he was born within the hour. It was just like so quick. But with her, everyone arrived and then it was 2 hours and then it was 3 and then it was 4 and then it was 5. And I was like, is this baby ever coming? I'm really tired at this point. I had been like up all night.
And I imagine that you feel like a sense of maybe guilt or like everyone's sort of waiting on me. So there's pressure to
and also
perform.
When you were expecting it to go as quickly as the second, I'm sure you're like, okay,
Yeah.
your body and your brain expected it. So then it's like everything beyond that is just like extra.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's also a sense of throughout my pregnancy, everyone I encountered, every practitioner that I went to, every class I went to, everything, people would say, well, the third is just a wild card. Every single person, like the front desk person, everyone everywhere said, well, the third is a wild card. And then someone was like, well, my third was a C-section. So I was like, oh God.
I wonder why that is and why it's not like every birth is a wild card.
Every birth is a wild card.
Right.
Every birth is a wild card.
And
And
it's just we want to control things and predict and make meaning out of everything. And
yeah. So I ended up having this second guessing throughout. But then once I realized there was an anterior cervical lip and nothing was going on with it, Angela offered to hold it back through a few contractions so that her head could descend into my pelvis. And I said, yes, please. I would like to have this baby now. And it was excruciating. It was really hard.
Is that a common practice?
It is something that midwives do.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Cool.
I don't know that things would have gone the same if I had been in a hospital.
Right.
Things could have turned out really differently. And after she was able to kind of descend into my pelvis, I looked at Angela, and there had been some question about the safety of her being born in the water or not. And after she held the lip back and I had those 3 big contractions, she came into my pelvis and I was like, Angela, can I get in the water? And she was like, yes. So I kind of waddled because once the baby's in your pelvis, you really feel weird moving around. And I got into the water and same position. I was on my knees holding Schaefer's hands and I was able to put her out. It took a while. Like I was pushing for longer. I felt like I was pushing for longer than I was with Hank. Maybe it was shorter when I actually look at the chart notes, but it felt like a long time. And
it was different.
It was different. And then when she came out, of course, you can't see as well in the water. And I did the same kind of maneuver where I flipped over the cord to try to get her onto my chest, but I have a birth video, and so I can see exactly what happened, and I slipped a little bit, which is so comical when you're like trying to, have this baby come onto your chest. I went down a little bit in the water, and then we put her on my chest, but as I tried to pull her up, the cord was around her neck.
Oh.
And we couldn't tell at first, and it was so tight. And so we got the cord out from her neck and put her on my chest, and she cried. They rubbed her and she cried. And at no point was I nervous, but I started feeling like maybe things in the room were nervous a little bit. And I knew that my midwife's preference was to have the placenta birth out of the water so that she could really get a good sense of my blood loss, which I very much appreciate. I've also been noticing a lot more of my clients hemorrhaging post-birth, and I don't know why. It's more common, but I was really aware of that. And my partner also, Schaefer, was really aware of that kind of for the first time. He didn't really consider the possibility that could happen. But in between all of these births, we've actually had people that we know die from childbirth. There's just been a lot more talk about the risks associated with birth. And I think midwives have this amazing reverence for birth that I also hold, that sometimes in the Western medical system, we just are either treated as a disease that needs medicine or a surgery that needs to happen, or just like an event that happened, not a big deal.
The third or fourth of the day or whatever.
Exactly. And that every birth is this mystical, incredible experience, and all of the bodies that are able to birth babies are amazing. And the power that it holds is just so special. So anyway.
Was there a lot of blood, like visually?
There was a gush of blood right after she came. And because I knew that preference, I stood up, got out of the tub, and by the time I got onto my bed, the placenta had already come out. And she said it was the biggest placenta she's ever seen.
Wow.
It was really big.
Were you, like, proud of
I was so proud. Oh, yeah.
Your body did that.
My body did that.
And then just let it out.
Yeah, it grew an amazing placenta. Whereas with Hank's birth, I was like, no, I don't think I'm going to have the placenta. I think I'll just keep it. And my midwives were like, that's hilarious. You need to birth the placenta now.
Yeah.
And then with this one, it just came right out.
Wow.
So, yeah. And she did an amazing job eating. She was 8 pounds, 6 ounces. So biggest baby I had had. And it was wonderful.
What would you say was the biggest difference between your second and your third birth? I guess a better question is like, did you like having a water birth more, or was it just a totally different experience? So like you can't really compare them, and which one you like more?
When I think about pushing, I was able to really control her descent in the water. And I was able to reach down and kind of protect my own labia and protect myself from tearing in a way that I just didn't feel like I could with my other 2 births. And feeling her head and feeling her hair, it was just really amazing. And being in the water just gave me this sense of lightness that I really enjoyed.
Cool.
But I'm really flexible. So it's sort of like wherever it happened, it happened.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then postpartum was super special, having both of the other babies come and meet her. And yeah, it was just a beautiful experience.
That was my question I wanted to ask you, how it was for you splitting your heart. Did you feel like it was splitting your heart? I feel nervous about that. It brings me a sense of grief knowing that I can't just give everything to one baby. What was that like for you to do it once and then again?
My husband's dad, so my father-in-law, has this amazing story that he shares with me. He shared it with me when my husband and I got married, actually. And it's that when Schaefer was little baby Schaefer, Charlie is my father-in-law. Charlie went into his room after he found out that his wife was pregnant with their daughter and was watching Schaefer sleep and just weeping because he wasn't sure that he could love anything as much. It's like so beautiful. And especially for like a dad of that generation to share that, it's really powerful. And what he said was that when Audrey was born, that his heart just grew. And the amount of and the amount of love that he had to give grew. And so I really took that with me into having a second and having a third. But I do feel like my family is complete. When I had Hank and Sadie, I felt like there was one missing. And I don't feel that feeling anymore. I feel like all of them are here now.
So your heart has grown to its maximum capacity.
I can have some nephews here and there, maybe a niece or something, but
Oh, that's a special story.
How did the other 2 do with the transition to becoming not the youngest baby to stepping into their big sister, big brother role?
that was probably the hardest time. It was the first few weeks for them. It also coincided with them being in school for a little bit and then having winter break. So it was just hard. It was really hard. it was, all of those toddler things that you think are challenging. Like, I want the orange bowl, but like not that orange bowl. And then you get the orange bowl and you throw it on the ground. Like, just all of those things were amplified for both of the kids, actually, in a surprising way, because never was it directed at her, but it was all about this change. They had also been waiting, and the waiting is hard for kids. Like, knowing that they might have a sister, but not today, but we don't know when, is really, really challenging. And it was really hard.
Wanting an orange bowl is essentially like, you're loving this other thing, that's how they're processing, totally. Or not processing yet. Yeah.
And like, I can't come downstairs and help you right now,
It's hard.
And they really understood the recovery piece because we are so adamant about it. And that was helpful. But when I finally did come back downstairs, they were like, are you allowed to be downstairs right now?
Oh.
Yeah. But now, I mean, we've just kind of grown. And it was sort of that, like what Barb said, we had to break it down. We had to break down that family unit of 4 and make room for our little 5th edition. And she's really amazing as a baby.
Is she the grounding force now? Like,
Yeah.
did that ring true then eventually?
I think it did. I think she really has become a grounding force for me and for all of us. Although I have to say, all of my babies have been this cool.
Oh, have they all brought added a little bit to your work in their own ways?
Oh, yeah. Oh,
you had so many experiences now.
Yeah, like I've had a baby with a tongue tie that we got released when she was 4 when she had to have her tonsils out because of her airway issues. I had a baby with a tongue tie where we didn't do anything, and we may have to at some point. And then I had a 3rd baby with a tongue tie, and we decided to get it released. And just all of the things that I do for my clients in terms of the body, I have seen it so closely, and I've also experienced like needing to do the aftercare that feels impossible, and you're sleep deprived and you don't want to, or you forget. And, I've kind of done it all. And that feels really, really powerful that I've had those experiences, but also I take every experience that I've had with every family I've ever worked with and add it to my arsenal of experiences.
Yeah. We have a lot of baby on the brain.
Yeah, it's a topic that sometimes is challenging to move away from in my house.
I'm sure.
We have to actively really think about, I have to actively really think about talking about things that aren't baby related.
I can imagine. At the end of every episode, we ask everyone 2 questions. And the first question is, what advice would you give someone who's about to give birth? I'm sure you've got a lot.
I will just say one thing. When people tell you to trust yourself, it seems like it could be really easy to trust yourself, but it's not. And that's okay. So if you're looking inward and trying to trust yourself and not finding the answers, that's okay too.
It can be scary.
And that, your birth will not be what you think it will be, no matter what.
No matter what, really.
And the last question that we ask is if there's anything that stands out as particularly funny about either of your pregnancies or birth or postpartum experience, or just parenting in general.
Parenting is hilarious. Everything about parenting is hilarious. One of the best moments postpartum was I was still in bed and the baby was in the middle of getting her diaper changed by Schaefer. And we heard from down the hall, "I'm ready," which is what Sadie says when she's pooped and needs help wiping. And then at the same time, Hank runs into our room where we have another bathroom, and he's like, "I need to poop." And Schaefer was like, "I'm going to do this. I've got to get the trifecta." And he did. So it was just a wonderful thing to witness. Just all the poop.
It's a real example of what it's like to have 3 kids.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everyone poops at the same time.
Yeah.
It's an emergency. I'm really glad that we got to hear all 3 stories.
No, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to talk to you guys today.
yeah.
It was really lovely.
Thank you for coming on.
Yeah.
You're
I'm
welcome.
excited to look up all these people you've referenced.
I know.
Throughout.
I know some of them.
I mean, we have an incredible community in Portland.
Yeah.
I agree.
And you seem to be everywhere. Like everyone that I come in contact in the perinatal sphere, they're all
Knows
connected
you.
to Be Well. What is your Instagram handle again?
Be Well Baby PDX.
That's it. Yeah. I see you on there on everything.
Well, we'd love to have you on again sometime in the future to maybe like dive deeper into one specific topic or I don't know. I feel like we could talk
Yeah.
forever with you.
I would be happy to come back. Thank you.
Yeah, and
Thank you.
We had a
Little
nice
Rosemary.
littlest guest who didn't nap.
It was
Are you gonna be so
our-
tired?
It was our pleasure to be here. She's going to sleep in the car.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much.
Bearing Birth is available on all major podcast streaming services. We invite you to subscribe as well as follow us on Instagram at Bearing Birth Podcast.